Shout out to Grant and all the helpers to restore our internet at Mountain Cloud, and for the really creative interim connection that's kept us online with the cloud for the last few days. Really appreciate that.
And Jeremy lent us his satellite for tonight.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you. So, wow, here we are. Again and always for the first time. So welcome everyone to this early August Dharma talk. Here at Mountain Cloud we gather every Thursday for a round of zazen, this silent sitting, and some kind of Dharma offering, usually, traditionally, taking up a koan to explore the reality that we embody, each one and together, in our sitting. The reality of who we truly are. You could say the fact, a word that's kind of gone out of favor lately. But this is a fundamental way of using that word, this fact. Zen calls it true nature, fundamental nature, original nature, or your original face. The one, empty, infinite boundlessness that is as close as the beating of your heart, the rise and fall of a breath, or the coming and going of a thought. In one of his verses in the Gateless Gator, Mumon Khan, Master Mumon says, just because it is so clear, it takes us longer to realize it. This clarity. Well, there's really nothing to see. But the invitation is to see that. So it's fair to say a Dharma talk is simply a gesture pointing to it. This it that gets named over and over in the tradition. This it. Before the talk, this teisho, we recited, and as we do all the time, this gata or verse called On Opening the Dharma. I like that title. Opening the Dharma. This Dharma. The teaching. All this inheritance, all these ancestors, all of it opened right here. And also Dharma, the reality, that fact, that it. And we say, again and again, it is always encountered but rarely perceived, even in thousands of ages. Some of the old timers here at Mountain Cloud will recall that an older version, I mean, you might say original, there's really no such thing, version of this verse says, even in hundreds of thousands of millions of kalpas. It's always encountered but rarely perceived. Even in hundreds of thousands of millions of kalpas. A kalpa, just one kalpa, is an immeasurable length of time, a world of time. I mean, some of the tradition, you reach back, it's like one kalpa is the creation of a world, the duration of a world, the destruction of a world. So every time we gather and open the scroll of this teaching, we evoke, express, receive the nearly unimaginable boundlessness of the Dharma. Now we can see it, hear it, receive and maintain it. Now. That boundlessness is nothing but you, yourself. And everywhere you turn, there it is. Your turning itself is it. As the Heart Sutra puts it, exactly, precisely it. That clarity, intrinsic clarity. So kalpas, time beyond measure. And the same goes for space. There's a line from Dogen in his fascicle, Being Time, or sometimes translated the time being, and sometimes with a hyphen. How do you turn that? Anyway, he writes, each moment is all being. Each moment is the entire world. Reflect now whether any being or any world is left out of the present moment. That sort of says it all. Lately I've been quoting the poet and spoken word artist Andrea Gibson, who said, "There is more time in one moment than in a decade." Or could have said, than in a kalpa. Past, present, future. Reflect now. Is there anything left out of now? Or another word for that would be home. Just called up this miscellaneous koan from Joshu where he says, the true Buddha, well, that's you, is sitting in the innermost recesses of the house. Well, that would be now. So for tonight, as a way of looking into the boundlessness and immediacy of our real life, I'd like to turn to a koan. This is case 34 in the Hekiganroku, or Blue Cliff record. And the title that I know it by, there are different translations, is Kyozan's Not Wandering. Thank you. So here's the case. Oh, first of all, just a word. We were here last night when Scott gave the Wisdom Wednesday talk, and 19 or 20 people in the Zendo and folks online, even with the phone, and there were some new people here. It's just a joy. Somehow you find your way. So I just want to say a word, if you're new, to keep in mind that these koans, these texts, these exchanges passed down generation to generation from the ancestors, they are not explanations. They've been described as dark to the mind, but radiant to the heart. So, if this is a kind of foreign idiom, or maybe even one you're really familiar with, there's always this invitation to listen with beginner's mind. Like you might listen for the first time to a piece of music in an unknown style. Here's the case. Kyozan asked a monk, "Where have you come from?" The monk said, "From Mount Ro." Kyozan said, "Have you wandered among the 5 elder peaks?" The monk said, "No, I've never been there." Kyozan said, "Then you have never wandered in the mountains at all." And there's this comment at the end from Unman or Yunmin. "Because of too much compassion, these words have fallen into grasses." Years ago, I took up a koan with our root teacher, Reuben, about the grasses. And this master is addressing his monks at the end of a 3-month period of practice, the Yango. And he says, "Now go out the gate to the place where there's no grass. Go to that place. Where there's no grass for kalpas, for miles." And this monk says, "How do you do that?" Grasses. Grasses. I just remember at the end of that exchange, Reuben said, "It's all grass." I'm not sure that's what Unman has in mind here with this too much compassion. Maybe he's commenting on what this monk receives in this exchange. So let's look at it. This master Kyozan, or in Chinese Yangshan, 9th century master, Tang Dynasty, is a disciple and Dharma era of Isan or Guishan. And together they form one of these 5 schools or houses of Chan or Zen. There are a number of koans from Isan and Kyozan, and a really nice record. I'm sure it's just a bit of it, but we have a record of their teaching. And this particular school out of the 5 did become known for its compassion. And it got criticized later on for being too soft. You know, this tradition where the masters would shout and hit. And here, there's just a kind of response. We're not even sure the monk gets it. So the line eventually dies out, and others did too, actually, Unman, Hogan. So now there are just 2 schools left, Soto and Rinzai. And this Sambo Zen that took root at Mountain Cloud 40 years ago is a combination of those 2 traditions, Soto and Rinzai. As a child, young adult, we're not sure how old, Kyozan longed to pursue the way. And at the time, that meant renouncing the world and becoming a monk. His parents forbade it. According to the record, Kyozan cut off 2 of his fingers to demonstrate his resolve. We live in a different time. So we might ask, what would you give up to make clear your resolve to live a life of practice? A bodhisattva life, a life for the awakening of all beings. Or what would you receive out of this immense support to live that life? Kyozan went on to be ordained. He became a student of Tangen, who was this well-known successor to the national teacher. There are all these cases that some of you may have heard. And with Tangen, Kyozan had a first insight. The record says this first insight. At a time when Tangen, this master, was already an old man. As far as I know, there's not a lot said about the content of that first insight. But we might imagine there are these signposts that come our way in practice, these glimpses, like, well, in Kinhin, you might take one step and suddenly the whole universe takes a step. Or you might find yourself sitting, maybe the last round of the day where we face in, gazing at this beautiful pocked and pitted floor from years of practice, and suddenly the floor is breathing. Or maybe the wall, facing the wall, and suddenly no distance. Or somebody said, the wall is loving me back. what is that? Or just a moment when anxiety presents, maybe somewhere in the body, and then just dissolves into what? Kyozan went on to study with Isan what Zen tradition calls maturing the sacred embryo. That maturing took a long time for him. I mean, really, who is counting? But it's a bit reassuring when we fall into that measure to realize this great master of great compassion and clarity. You know, some of the records say it was 30 or 40 years before it just fell open. Isan had a sense, though, that Kyozan would come to match him, come to this eye to eye, this one world, just the joy of sharing this world. It's going on all the time, but to just get it clear. This one realizing. Here's a line from Dogen. He says, "To know your own heart-mind, which is the same heart-mind as all things." Already so. So here's a scene that's recorded as Kyozan's great awakening with Isan. And just keep in mind, you know, all these years of practice. And somehow this moment was just a turning moment out of the blue. Kyozan asks Isan, what is the true abode of Buddha? You know, what about that innermost recesses of the house? What is this real home? And Isan says, think of the unfathomable mystery and return your thoughts to the inexhaustible numinous light. We're always trying to get rid of those. He's saying use it. And then he says, when thoughts are exhausted, you've arrived at the source, where true nature is revealed as eternally abiding. In that place, there is no difference between affairs and principle. Different way of saying maybe form and emptiness, or all these phenomena, all this functioning, all this stuff, and the fact. There's no difference. And the true Buddha, Isan says, is manifested. Where is that true Buddha manifested? Somehow it just fell on him, fell open, fell away. Upon hearing these words, Kyozan experienced a great awakening. It's not back then, it's not over there. It's this. Exhaust thought, Isan says, and arrive at the inexhaustible. So that's the reality Kyozan is inviting us to taste and see now in this exchange with a monk who arrives having come from Mount Ro. Probably just grew up there. Or maybe he was practicing there. Where have you come from? It's not an ordinary question. Time and again, masters ask this of monks, of pilgrims, of lay practitioners, and they miss it. Understandably, sometimes I feel like they miss it on our behalf. They don't see. We don't see, of course, just because it's so clear. And here's the opportunity. The Dharma. Incomparably profound, minutely subtle, is always encountered. Where do you come from? If you arrive at the end of your life and have then the wherewithal to hear this question, how might you respond? Where have you come from? I come from Santa Fe, actually Lamy, or from Mountain Cloud. Just that. From the West Coast, from the East Coast, from all over the map. And every sound is it, actually is your coming. Well, I went outside to get a drink, and I came into the Zendo. Where have you come from? From Mount Ro, says the monk. Ro, or Rozan, is this high holy place, one of the most beautiful and most famous mountains in the southern part of China, home to many, still today, many Zen Chan monasteries. And there's one mountain set deep within the 5 elder peaks, a place of pilgrimage, of wisdom and compassion, a signifier of our true home. So this monk says, from Mount Ro. Actually showing that place from Mount Ro. But he's not yet seeing it. He seems to be just talking in terms of geography. So Kyozan checks further. Have you ever wandered among the 5 elder peaks? I mean, in a way, he's saying, have you seen the whole landscape? Or he may be asking, have you realized? Have you awakened to who and what you truly are? Whether he gets the question or not, this monk is honest. No, I've never been there. And Kyozan, it's so kind. He doesn't pull out a stick or shout. I mean, that could have helped maybe. Or grabbed him by the lapels like, Rinzai, it's right here. Instead, Kyozan says, then you have never wandered in the mountains at all. This whole terrain, I've never been there. Yeah, what is that wandering? Well, we might protest, I hike in the Sangre de Cristos. I walk in the Caldero Preserve. I run or walk or wander up Atalaya, or the roads or trails wherever you are. But Kyozan isn't asking about a destination. He's pointing to this world where there's no coming or going. Or that world where no matter where we go, already home. I just thought of Joan Reeks saying, to be on the way without ever leaving home. To be fully at home without ever leaving the way. So usually in this case, the interpretation of Kyozan's response, or his question, have you ever wandered in the five peaks? It's, have you awakened? Have you seen for yourself that vast vista? Have you come home to the unique specificity of your life that is at the same time? Well, Bodhidharma called it vast and void. Beyond the dimensions of any map, no matter how familiar or beautiful or tragic. Have you ever wandered in the wide world that springs forth now? Now. Now. This borderless world. Last night, Scott gave a really lovely back to basics intro talk. It's been a while since I've heard you do that, so I enjoyed it especially, and talked about how Zen enumerates things. And one of the ways it does that is these three fruits. The first fruit, if you've read the three pillars, you might know it's called joriki in Japanese, but this growing concentration, this deepening power, actually, of just being here. Or as our teacher Ruben used to say, concentration. He would living out of the center of your being. It's always only here. And it's always borderless. And we come to that more and more deeply, more and more alive in the course of practice. And then the second fruit, somehow, something that we can't make happen, can't go and get. You can really cultivate the first fruit. You can cultivate the third fruit. But that second fruit that Kyozan is asking about, have you ever wandered? Have you ever been in the 5 peaks? You say you're from that place. Have you been in this landscape? That fruit, this falling away or falling open, as Dogen said, body and mind falling away. There's so many descriptions of it. Maybe not that helpful. But one thing that is constant in that is that this construct that doesn't exist actually in the way we imagine, that I am here and this whole world is out there. That's not true. And so we suffer that construct. It's so insecure. And it's not that it requires Zen practice for that to fall away, but it sure can till the soil. That habit can just go, not by our own doing, but somehow what we think this is can just, maybe in a moment and maybe for a moment, just vanish. And then, world. And everywhere you turn, that's it. That's you. It's a relief. It's a great relief. Because there's this sense that we carry around some burden, some satchel with all this identity in it. And suddenly you just put it down. And wonder of wonders, we don't need it. Everything keeps functioning with way less energy and more freedom and compassion. And then comes the third fruit, the lifelong practice. How to embody it. How to be what we are. Seems so odd. How could you not? To live that in your own unique and unrepeatable way. Kyozan, in this case, offers a turning word for the monk. You haven't seen this world, your own native ground. Then you haven't wandered in the mountains at all. You haven't quite seen yet the real landscape of your ordinary life. You haven't seen what the Heart Sutra calls this emptiness. Nothing at allness, this no substanceness, this nothing to hinder anythingness. You haven't seen there's no other emptiness than this. And that is its beauty. We don't hear, in this case, what the monk comes to. But later, this great next generation master, Unman or Yunmin, hears the teaching, so later, and adds that comment. Because of too much compassion, these words have fallen into grasses. Or there's another rendering, a translation, where Unman says, these words were all for the sake of compassion. Thus, they had a conversation in the weeds. I like that better, actually. Our life in the weeds. The master Engo compiled this, or added the instructions and the comments. There's one comment here, he says, the sword that kills people, the sword that gives people life. 2 or 3. If you want to know the mountain road, you must be the person who travels on it. No question, that's what we're doing. That single sword, life-death. The sword that cuts off our concepts, the breath, or maybe moo, or maybe the ache in your body. That moment at hand that doesn't exclude anything. That sword, sometimes called the feather-blown sword. Whatever just touches it. The two cut into one. In Scott's talk last night, toward the end, he just asked, what puts your feet on this path? Right away, and thank you, Sam, Jeremy, spoke up, suffering. This thing we think we need to escape, to avoid. But what a portal. Not like, oh, I need to cultivate this, I need to bring it on. We've got plenty. Time to stop. I'll just say that Scott and I are about to leave for the annual Sambo Zen teacher training in Germany. Next Thursday we take off. So I'd like to end with just a few words from Yamada Kon Roshi. Sorry, it's getting late. But this just came up. He wrote, if you practice mu with full devotion, or it could be breathing, you will eventually come to a sort of a saturation point. It's just like the process of crystallization through dissolving some substance in a solvent. He was keen intellect, and they obviously did this experiment, when he was growing up in science class. When the saturation point has arrived, You can't dissolve any more of this substance. He says, if there's no further stimulus, nothing will happen. But should some slight stimulus be applied to the solution, crystals will form. Roshi goes on, in the practice of Mu, this state of saturation is the condition known as the time of dying the great death, that edge of the sword. It's the point where our self-consciousness, that I, has died out or just gone quiet. He says if you just remain in this state of death, you never arrive at realization. There are any number of things which can then touch off a Kensho experience, this awakening, this turn. But they are, after all, just the stimulus applied to the state of saturation. I take this in, of course, as guidance, as instruction, and also just the way laid open. Let ourselves be saturated so there's nothing left. Let Mu occupy everything if you're sitting with Mu. Or if breathing, let that be nothing but that. No remainder. And then a gesture, a sound, even a thought. And it's just that. The slightly wilting flowers, the candle, the Buddha, the late daylight, the long talk. Roshi says you'll realize from the beginning there was nothing at all. And yet, here we are. Thank you.